Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Answers from the Stairs. I am your host, Chris Vester, and I've got with me today a gentleman who, over the last, I guess, probably 3 years, Rob, that we've known each other now, at least two. Um, I was involved in a coaching program that you're one of the leaders of, called the Master's Program, and I'm getting to know you pretty well and knowing where your heart's at and all that. I just really want to hear your story because I think there's a lot of interesting facts, at least what I can do in investigating your story.
That's
But Rob Dayton, who is out of Santa Barbara, California,
right.
and has been in the transportation space the majority of your life, it looks like, which is kind of interesting to me. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to give me the answers of your personal development as have you come through life and where you're at now and what you're being led by now and what you're involved in now and just getting some answers from you. Sound good?
Let's go, Chris. I
Cool.
appreciate that.
Well, I first question I always ask everybody is, what's your birthday?
11/22, November 22nd. Yep.
What year?
65.
65. So I know you don't remember back that far, but if we start there, do you remember the first job you had? Like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a paying job because I know a
Oh,
lot of people
100%.
like were earning like allowances or whatever. But do you remember the first thing you did that actually earned you a paycheck or earned you income?
Yeah, Pasadena Star News, newspapers, subscriptions. I think I was doing that at 9 or 10. So definitely, and I actually killed it pretty big in that space. I don't know if it's the sweet little kid that the person can't refuse, but I actually made way more money than I knew what to do with in that in that particular job.
So cool. So how like what led to that? Like what
I,
made you go out and want to do something to provide money for your pockets?
well, actually, just someone um, was recruiting kids on our street. And so we kind of had a team of neighborhood folks that just went out. They would pick us up, and then we'd go to an apartment building, and we just go door to door and saying, "Hey, can we sign you up?" I did it for probably 2 years. I don't know if it went away because of child labor laws, but it was definitely back in the day. It was, I think we got something like it must have been like I think it was $15 a subscription or something like that. So for a
Man,
kid
that's
who
a
was
lot
very
of
young,
money
it's
in
a lot of money.
1975 or four. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of money, and it felt like a lot of money. It felt like a lot of money, and yeah, really fun.
So going back then, what was the biggest challenge of that particular job?
It wasn't challenging whatsoever. I have a natural talent to want to be with people and to win them over. My strengths are had I had winning others over in my top five at that time, communication. So it was just very natural for me to ring a doorbell and hey, I'm selling papers for the subscriptions to Star News, and I even said a little bit about the paper. My parents were getting the paper. I knew a little bit about it, and just very natural and didn't really take any skill and couldn't believe it was actually a job.
So do you remember like so that was from 9 to roughly 11. What came next?
So I think I was just doing odd jobs, but I felt like I've always been an entrepreneur. Like even on vacation, we were in Oxnard on the beach one time on vacation, and I just started collecting rocks, and then I painted eyes on them, and I started siliconing them to driftwood, and made these people, these rock people, and then I would sell them, outside a restaurant in Channel Islands. And so I think that I've always had that, how could I get people to do something? Maybe it's about my personality. I feel like, it can be manipulative for sure, winning others over, just trying to get people to do stuff. I think in my leadership, that's also the case today is I'm trying to get people to do stuff. I get better for me, and I know this is for you, Chris, is get better is kind of how I trust people. If people want to get better, I really
Mhm.
trust them. I'm actually pulling that from Stephen Covey, It'd be actually Stephen Covey Jr. It's the only book his son wrote, which is an incredible book called The Speed of Trust.
Yeah, I love that
And
book.
so I want to see that in others, and so I'm kind of always expecting that of myself.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, it looked to me the best I could find that one of the first jobs you had that what I would say is in the real world workspace was associate traffic engineer for and that was in 1988 to 1990 ish.
Yeah, Barton Ashman.
Hmm.
Can't believe you found that. Pretty crazy that how you fall into things. I think in the business world, I think that this actually can be a trap. I know that it's going to be leveraged no matter what in terms of purpose, which is kind of what your podcast is about. But I was at USC. I went from Westmont to USC, and I had two options: film school, which I dearly wanted to do, but did not think I could get in, and the other option was urban regional planning. Kind of knew I would get in, so I went. I kind of ducked, and then just right out of school was at a party that was for this company, and I had an interview like the next day, and found myself working as a traffic engineering apprentice, and that was pretty wild. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I as a kid, I really liked playing cars in the backyard and making roads and buildings. I've always been
Hmm.
a city thinker, so maybe that was why it was okay. But yeah, that was my first career, and that's consulting, and it is what it was.
Right. And going from that to the city of Santa Barbara, senior traffic planner, that was 92 ish.
Yeah, I had a stint with another environmental firm doing in California. We call them environmental impact reports. They're kind of the bane of any developer. They have to take a microscope to their property with anything biological. I mean, it's just social impact. It's a little crazy. A lot of money to be made in the consulting space. So I took the management role for a transportation division in that one. And then I went to Santa Barbara because I was running from a relationship. It's a really crazy story. I was just in a really bad place. I had a really duplistic lifestyle of church on Sunday and then 6 days a week, just indulging in the worst of things. I was married at the time, ended up cheating on my wife, and then I just had to get out. I couldn't live the duplistic life anymore. I needed to be one-sided. So I actually got a job. I read the announcement 15 minutes before the application was due. I quickly went back to my office at Invicom Corporation, put together a resume and faxed it, I think with maybe 30 seconds to
Wow.
spare. And then I ended up getting that job. And then I told my wife, "You're not coming to Santa Barbara." And then I just went off the rails. I went, just all the lifestyle I never had as a kid. I just kind of went off the rails. And that was the beginning of my career at the city of Santa Barbara.
Wow. Because you were, if I remember correctly, you're a pastor's child, right? You're a pastor's kid when your dad
He's
a
a
pastor.
Yeah, we wouldn't call him a pastor traditionally, like being up front in church pastor, but he was a world evangelist, vice president for World Vision International, very significant reach um, across the world. There's a conference called Lausanne in Switzerland. He was kind of one of the curators of that with Billy Graham in the first one in Switzerland, and he was a real heavy hitter in the church as well. And that was part of my diblistic lifestyle, is that I I couldn't let him down. I had to appear as though I was great when I really wasn't.
And I'm glad you're getting into that because that's going to lead us to a way that you got involved in doing some coaching that same the way I met you, right? Using biblical principles and understanding that everywhere we are is our mission field. Um, but between that job at the city of Santa Barbara and which was from 92 to 21, so you were there for a while,
I was there for 30 years. Yep.
a long time.
Hmm.
And you spoke about getting divorced, but you also in that space met Nancy, and y'all got married in 98. Is that correct?
We did. We did. We were volleyball partners. I thought she was a little too sexy for me. Like there's a word I call unattainium. I thought she was made of unobtainium, and so that was actually worked out well for our relationship because I wasn't trying to chase her, and we were just great volleyball partners. Santa Barbara East Beach is one of the most incredible sand volleyball places in the world. There's lots of nets. There's probably 40 nets, very highly competitive, and we just dominated. And then eventually I asked her friend out, and she came and got really upset at me, like, "Why didn't you ask me?" And I'm I'm thinking, "What are you doing tonight?" So we kind of started that journey, and actually, I was at that point, I was really kind of feeling like I needed to come back to God and be a follower. And it was kind of a bad move because she wasn't a follower. And so I kind of said, "Hey," after falling in love with her, okay, there we go again, Rob. Is I said, "Hey, I can't really do this because I need to follow Jesus." And she's like, "Follow Jesus? I want to follow Jesus." So that set us off into getting married very quickly. And then the beautiful part of that about that story is she's the one who held me accountable to behaviors that were Jesus consistent, because she didn't know any better. She didn't grow up in religiosity. She never had the duplistic lifestyle. She was just one way, and then she went to another direction. And so it's quite beautiful how this, someone might say, young believer actually helped me be a believer.
Right. And I know a little of that story because I've listened to so much of the podcast you do for 100X Life, and you talk about that as having her as a life partner, but more than anything, an accountability partner in that walk, and how much that shifted you because you had lived this other side of it. You know, you had been involved, stepped away, stepped back into it, right? So the lesson, two lessons I'd love to hear is like the lesson of asking her friend out rather than her. Like, what'd you learn in that lesson? And then like introducing her to something you had been involved with before. And she goes, no, I want to hear more about that. And then seeing that she leads you to a higher level of accountability. Like, what would you say your takeaways are there?
I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know. I don't know what it was really that asking her friend out. Her friend was obviously someone I thought was askable. I don't like rejection. And so I wasn't about to ask. It's kind of like back to USC, right? I didn't apply to film school because I felt like I was going to be rejected. So we kind of got that theme in Rob's life. So I think the lesson there is that, hey, you need to go for things.
Mhm.
You really need to go for it. And then I think, with Nancy, I think even while she said, "Okay, I want to follow Jesus too," if I'm honest, I would say I felt like I was making a mistake in marriage, and because I was always taught you want to be in partner with someone who is going the same place you're going, is can support you when you're weak. And I felt like maybe that wouldn't be the case. Like, my ideal would have been someone who was already strong in that relationship and with God, and then they would pull me up. And so I think the lesson there is that you could be surprised by, people will just always surprise you. They're always better than you think they are. They show up at the most remarkable times. And I would say God's role in this too. It's almost like he was orchestrating the whole thing and really taking care of me, and knowing because I had made the decision to recommit, he was going to help me get to the path where I could actually live a life that he would love me to live.
That's good. And you said a while ago that, and I want to talk about that too, because you said one of your strengths is like winning people, but you also trust. You quoted the Stephen Covey Jr. book. You trust by people who want to improve, who want to step up, who want to move forward. And what I'm hearing you say is that when Nancy got introduced to Jesus, she's like, "No, I want to step up in this space." So how much does that build your trust in her almost to me? Like, oh, you want to be ahead of me, right?
That's a great observation. I think it's absolutely true.
Gotcha. Um, so when when did you get involved with the master's program? Because I know from what I could tell, you became the national director of coaches in 2020, right? But that's not a role you're just going to walk into. Like you definitely had to walk out the TMP life for a while, I'm assuming. How walk me through that process and even describe TMP because I mean you and I know what it is because I went through it. But even deep dive into that a little bit if you'd like.
Well, the master's program is it's apostrophe S, so it's Jesus is the master. So it's the concept is that what would Jesus's program be for your growth, for your acceleration? So I I actually just got the honor of meeting Bob Shank, who's the founder of the program, and he was a coach. He was coming through Santa Barbara. He was kind of expanding at the time out of Orange County, and I just got invited. And I could tell right away this is something that would be favorable to accelerate my desire to follow Jesus. And so, it was pretty amazing that it turned out to be such a great lifestyle rubric for how to do that. So the two things we're looking at in the master's program is life mastery. How do you accelerate in the 10 things that God's given only you to manage? And then life mission, what's the thing that God designed you for that you could actually really accelerate at, and it's because that's your design. And then I'll add the 100x life that you brought up on the podcast I do was another part of the program that I'm actually just double clicking on and expanding, which is the abundant life, the best life we can have. Jesus says is just listening to his words and putting them into practice. And they're life-giving, they're freedom, they're less stressful, there's peace, there's joy. It's like if you want the best life ever, you're going to listen to what he says and how he says to think and live that way, and you will have the best life ever. I feel like I've proved that to myself. So the program's 3 years. I went through the program. All sorts of changes for Nancy and me came out of that process. Significant changes, how we addressed what we were doing. I'd say the biggest change in my workspace. So, here I am, a city official, senior public works official. My thought was, well, how do I actually put the master's program into practice? So two things that really stand out is I was able to cut half my work that really wasn't the best for me to do. It just kind of brought other people down. Um, not the best. So I was able to cut that work out and actually make more money at the same time, doing what I really accelerated to do and what I'm more designed to do, which is imagining the future for the city of Santa Barbara. So if I can do that in government, imagine what you could do in business was kind of my thought, like, oh my gosh, look what I did in government. And then the other thing is I really believed that my role is to inspire others, is to encourage others, is to my best self is to create the best self in others. And so I started trying that out. I went to the works director and I said, hey, there's this thing called the strengths program with Gallup. It's really cool for, better culture. Do you mind if I teach a class to all of public works? And she was very kind by saying, well, let's do a private pilot program with 15 people, which is another way of saying it might not work out. And people left the room that first pilot day, that
Wow.
pilot class. They left the room saying, you missed your calling. That was the thing I heard the most. And I thought to myself, actually, I'm just starting.
Right. There you go.
So when I retired, so that was probably 2000, I started doing coaching, intentionally coaching the workforce of the city of Santa Barbara. I intentionally started doing that, I would say in 2010.
Mm.
And by the end of my career, although I had a title, people would say, well, actually, he's the culture coach of the city of Santa Barbara. And then I started exporting that into other cities. And then Bob invited me to teach the master's program, to be a coach in the master's program in 2014. So I had been teaching the program, and up until the moment I was asked to be the national director of coaches for probably 6 years of experience in that space.
Yeah. And did you, I know you've been through it. Has Nancy gone through? I mean, she's living with a TMP coach, so I'm assuming that it's just life as a general. But has she ever actually gone through on her own?
She did go through it for she lasted probably 5 or 6 sessions. She's not one to sit still. She's very driven. She's a very high achiever, and she didn't like the pace that the woman's coach was setting. And she's like, "Hey, I'm getting all this from you anyway. Why am I doing this?" So, I was a little frustrated, but that's what she did, and she's living it. She's really
Right.
living it.
I was like, you got to be living it because the reason I asked that is when I came back from my first session, I immediately told Suzanne, we've got to find you a cohort. Like this is something that I think we both should do. Because I got invited, I'm East Coast and got invited to California to do it, which ended up being how I did it. But wow, there's actually places on the East Coast that do this. I just didn't look. Noah had said, please come do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But Suzanne actually completed it just this past December. She did her graduation, and it's been a life changer for us because we speak the same language. It's one thing when you're a faith based family, like it's like you're already speaking the language of Jesus, but to be able to speak that through every single area of life and make it applicable. And it's interesting to me because you referenced Gallup because Gallup is definitely part of TMP. It's part of the way you figure out how has God gifted you with natural talents. And I heard you say winning people is one of yours. What are your other four of your top five?
So it's shifted a little bit, but for the longest time, futuristic, activator, communication, positivity, strategic, maximizers now on top. I think that I'm flexing because I'm trying to make teams better with cities. That's my business strategic culture is all about
Yeah.
creating effective teams in the city space. So maximizers moved up, but the rest are still there.
Yeah. And I was going to, that was actually my next question. I'm glad you said that because Strategic Culture Corp, tell me about what you do with that. How do you get introduced to cities and like it's again it's all strategy and it's all based in just talents, how we're naturally gifted. So walk me through some of that process.
Well, first of all, it's just a wonderful business that I have intentionally, because of the master's program, I've intentionally designed the business specifically tailored to my talent, to my passion, to my purpose. So it's so much fun. I wouldn't dare call it work, although I was in the city space for 30 years, so I'm finally making some serious money. So like, but what it is I focus on the executive team, and this can be the same for any executive team in business, but for cities, it's really true. The city manager thinks their team is the executive team. So the executive team is made up of all the department heads, public works, maybe wastewater, planning, parks and rec, all these department heads. And the city manager thinks that this is my team. The executive team, each of them think their team is the one that they're leading. So there's this, and this happens in business. There's this huge confusion about what is my team, and no one really is recognizing it. So I mean, it's just beautiful. I can just come in and start talking about this. People see it very clearly, and then it becomes what I do is I help the team see. We call it team number one, the executive team. That each of them need to think like a city manager. They need to think holistically about the city. It's not a siloed, can I get the most for my budget? And when that happens, and it happens very slowly, I think the sweet spot for me is working with a team for 2 years, and that's generally 8 offsites with a lot of coaching in between. They get to the place where you have these extremely brilliant conversations that are going to benefit the council. They're going to benefit the city they live in. They're going to benefit the residents of that place so much better because the team is focused on the best for the city rather than the best for their area of expertise. So it's so much fun, so rewarding, get a lot of great feedback from it. And then, it's like a lot of businesses, it's a word of mouth business. but I only really want 4 clients at any given time a year because I got to balance that with 100x Life, with the master's program. So, and the other things that I do. So that is kind of the sweet spot, and it just works out pretty cool. I am actually trying to expand the business a bit, not because I'm going to do more, but because I'm recruiting city managers who have gotten the bug, and now they are at their highest ability to actually impart to other city managers what they've learned about culture. And so I'm bringing them into the fold and saying, hey, you can do this. Let me show you how. Let me give you the playbook, and it's going to be rewarding if they've got the talent for it.
That's awesome. So, I mentioned your top 5 talents. Is that something like is the Gallup part of it when you're working with these teams? Are you like helping them understand how important it is to understand how we're built? I mean, because you said it, hey, because of TMP and what I learned in TMP and knowing my natural talents, now I'm getting to exactly apply those natural talents in a way that rewards me financially and gives me a really good income, and I'm having a great time at it. So
Yeah, you're creating energy.
right. Is that the way you approach the teams, sort of?
Yeah, I would say kind of at the 50,000 foot level, culture is really how we do things around here. That's what culture is. Everyone has a culture, and most of them suck. And then it's so strengths is a way to shift the view of people within a culture. It's really quite magical. Most people who are in the workplace, they want to succeed. They all want to know how to succeed, but they also have about 80% of their self-talk is negative. And so there's this huge disadvantage that we're not even talking about what's going on in your unconscious mind. And most people's perception of other people, although they have the 80% negative language going on in their mind, is that everyone else is just fine. And you kind of get bitter about that. So when we talk about strengths, it's really what's right about everybody. We don't talk about what's wrong about everybody. We want to highlight what's right about everybody, authentically right. Everyone, our ego is a little bit different than another, but the bottom line is that these are the natural talents you have, and we want to appreciate those. We want to pull on those. We want to use those maybe outside of your title, if there's a leadership opportunity for you. And what we find is when we do strengths for culture, it's such a powerful way of knowing the other person. And on an executive team, the way it works is if I know your strengths, it's about 20% personality, or actually a little bit more than that, but 80% personality. And so instead of a personality test like Myers-Briggs, which is fine, 16 personalities, very difficult to remember or understand, I've got these strengths, which got some headlines, futuristic, activator, communication. I kind of know what they are. And if I spend a little time investing in what that is about a person, if I know someone has, let's say, empathy, then I know that they're going to be sensitive to other people's feelings. Now I know how to communicate with them better and honor them in who they are. And what I found, Chris, that's really amazing is that when we look at ourselves and we start looking in the mirror and we start appreciating that we've got these natural talents, that they're good, that we can start changing that 80% negative language to be more positive. And here's the magic that I've seen in cultures is that if you can do that for a person, starting to appreciate yourself, this is what I have, authentically what I have to give, to contribute to this organization, you will naturally start appreciating everyone else.
That's good.
And I can't even believe that that happens, but it makes me think of, something, that's biblical is love your neighbor as yourself. The most important word I'm discovering is as. How much do you love yourself and appreciate yourself? Because if you have, and again, I'm going to say authentic appreciation for who you are, you're going to love others much better.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because application that I have seen is I've been invited to speak into some of the local high school classes. And, I developed a personal standard statement for myself a few years ago. I'm a bold man who acts with integrity and from love and stands as a beacon pointing to God's grace and mercy. Well, when I introduce myself in these regular, normal county classrooms, and I'm not afraid to say that, And just off chance, a couple of semesters ago, I said that. I said, does anybody know who they are that well? And none of the kids raised their hand, and they're all sophomores in high school. So I took the opportunity to walk someone through creating their statement. And the teacher said, hey, I need you to do that again the next time you're here, but I need you to do it for the whole class. I'm like, well, I don't have time for that. But her comment to me was, Chris, you have no idea how lost these kids are because they don't even know who they are. They don't have anything to identify themselves with. So it's hard for them to appreciate anything that else that they have, any talent they have, any desires they have, because they just don't appreciate themselves or even know who they are. And since then I've come in like the last 4 semesters, that's been like when they invite me to the class, it's what I teach. But seeing the light bulb go off in a sophomore, it's so satisfying. So I can't imagine in a situation where and I'm going to put it in air quotes, but government job, city job, to see people start appreciating each other based on what they appreciate about themselves because they've been told, hey, guess what? There's something good in you and everybody appreciates it. And can you appreciate it first? Because there's so much, I think our achievements are really rooted in how much we believe in ourselves. Like you said, so much of our self-talk is negative self-talk, you know?
And that could become positive. It just takes work.
Yeah. A lot of work, a lot of work. The 100X, I want to touch on that because I'm using that platform, inside my church, leading a group of men. We're doing the 62-day challenge. And I'm not going to share it on here, but I had such an amazing experience last night when I saw these guys inside of our Telegram group starting to have conversations discussing the quote unquote, I'm going to call it homework. But the ideas of applications of the words of Jesus. That's what your devotional book is about. And I told him the great thing is when the 62-day challenge is over, the great thing is we get to start over day one, right. We're going right back into it. But tell me, like, I know that's something you developed over the last couple of years, from what I'm gathering. Tell me where that came from. Cause I know that you've already said, hey, Strategic Culture Corp came from the application of what I learned in TMP, but this is I'm going to call it a side gig, right? Where did this brainstorm come from?
So it's just, this is a 30-year work in progress of, how do I follow Jesus? And Jesus it's really interesting because most would say, doesn't matter if you're a believer or not. Most would say, well, he was a very wise man. He had a lot to offer. And one of the things that I recognize about him is he, unlike the church experience that you and I attend, Chris, Jesus didn't have an altar call where you came forward and said, believe in me. No, he just said, follow me, which was really easy to do when he was there. There goes Jesus. Let's just follow him. But even the disciples, the people who were most close to him, didn't really believe until much later after the 3-year journey of following him. And then, so I think this is my supposition is that if you want the best life ever, if you want to have the most incredible, amazing existence on planet Earth, the answer is just living his words. And it turns out there's not many. I've come up with 55. Some people say 50. Some people maybe have a little bit more. I mean, I have an argument for 5 more, but it's a short list. And these things are not necessarily religious too. Like half of them, I would say we might think of as religious, but they're not. And I'll just tell you the ones that that I would say is that, for instance, deny yourself. Deny yourself is not a religious thing. Forgive. That's not religious, but that's freedom. Don't judge. Don't condemn. Become like a child in your thinking, in your belief for other people. Ask a lot of questions. Don't divorce. Keep your word. I mean, all of these, there's so many things that he says to do that are non-religious. And so I say to anybody, and I challenge them, try to integrate the things, the lessons he's given, the things he says to do for the abundant life into your daily life, and you will see your life transform into something that you really love, that you think is brilliant. And then along the way, you might meet Jesus. Probably will, because you'll fall in love with him in the process. But that's what 100x life is. And it comes from the parable of the sower, where Jesus says some of the words in terms of heart catching into people will be reproduced 30 times, 60 times, 100 times what was sown. So 100x life is, how do I multiply goodness, the goodness and the instructions that Jesus has given to achieve that abundant life? It really is a daily practice. It's a lot of work. You have to transform your mind, which, if any of your listeners know about how to actually change the way you're thinking, neurologists will tell us that there's lots of neuroplasticity. There's lots of availability to change your automatic behavior. So 100x life is just taking you on that journey by looking at life as a gym experience. The relational issues, the problems in your marriage, they're just a gym where you're working out and getting better, and taking that concept to actually transform your mind to live the words of Jesus and experience that abundant life.
Yeah. And it's a blessing. I can tell you that. It's been good. It's been really good to go through that. So as we're drawing to a close, we've talked about selling newspaper subscriptions.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Talked about traffic engineering, talking about the city of Santa Barbara as a transportation planner for 30 years that evolved into culture coaching, right? There's a lot of steps in that journey, right? So, and I know it's a lot of time. I mean, we went back all the way to your birthday. Give me two takeaways that you could say, hey, if there's the most important thing that I want you to hear from me today through this little boy selling newspapers to the guy that planned traffic in California, of all places, Lord have mercy. Right? I've been there. What are the takeaways?
Wow, hands down, I'd say the biggest takeaway is, the 100x life experience that I actually finally went to put to pen to paper and did a book, is that you can have an abundant life. You can have a very, very satisfying life. The world is telling us one way, the culture, the American dream is telling us one way to have a life that is good. But Jesus is saying he's giving us the answers, for the secret sauce for this abundant life. And I feel like I've proved it again and again and again. It's been absolutely phenomenal for me to prove that out, to see my mind rewired to actually do some of these behaviors, a lot of these behaviors automatically. And the joy, the peace, the love between in my family and friends, the rewards, life has just gotten so rich. So I'd say that's probably the biggest takeaway. And then probably another one, since you asked for two, and I think this is still a challenge for me that I'm trying to get, kind of figure out, is what is this eternity all about? And I don't think we think about that too much. I think it's a really hard concept for the human mind to grasp. Living forever, there's all these misconceptions about we're going to be, on clouds playing harps, someone say we're going to be worshiping all the time. And I'm just like, it sounds boring. I don't think that's what heaven is, not that I don't love worshiping, but like what is it, and how can I change my thinking to think about eternity so that I change the way I live here? I'd say that's something that I'm learning and working on and feel like I'm progressing in.
I think that's two solid pieces because I agree. The eternity piece, getting people to even think about life in the view of eternity, because we have life in the view of 75 years most of the time. In fact, I just got done reading a book. It was 4,000 Weeks, right? Which is a great book, but it's like you're only going to be here around 4,000 weeks. What are you doing with it? Which, the application of that can be worldly application. The application is, what can I be doing in light of eternity? So, because
So good. 86,400 seconds in a day, and I can't believe when people say, like now, when people say, how are we going to kill time? I just freak out. I'm like, what are you talking about? there's something that we can do. There's someone we can love. There's someone we can that is, people are just these incredible things if you see them as incredible image bearers of God, and then you look at them with kind of a wonder thought process. There's so much to do, so much to invest in. Time is short.
Yes, it is. Rob, thank you so much. Speaking of time, for your time today, it's been a blessing to be with you today. I think there's a ton to take away from it. How can people find you? I know that they can buy the 100X book on Amazon because, like, I want to say I bought 15 or 20 copies of it at the beginning of our men's group. But where can they find you? How can they connect to you if they want to hear more? And if they are interested in, like you said, just being one of the clients that you're like, I'm keeping them small, but what is that? How do they find you?
So I think that just because it's easy to remember for anyone, if you want to get in touch with me, it's go to 100xlife.com. There's a place where you can connect with me there. My email address, robdayton at 100xlife.com. And then there's links to the book there. You can find it on Amazon if you search 100x Life, no spaces. But yeah, and then there's also, as you know, you're taking your guys through a 62-day challenge, which is this mix of we're gonna work out our bodies, we're gonna we're gonna say no to certain things the body really craves, like alcohol, sugar. We're gonna drink a lot of water to keep our hydration up and our health up, and we're going to eat a lot of veggies. So, and then we have this, reading the book along the way and doing some journaling practice, which is hard for a lot of people, but is the fast track to changing the way you think.
That's good. Well, thank you for your time today, brother. I appreciate it.
So good, Chris. Thanks a lot. I
Thanks.
appreciate you.